pretty wild rides, more than that one. If you race long enough, you're going to get into some of that every now and then. But I'll tell you what, if the car runs right, we'll be in good shape down here. The Talladega deal just was a freak thing, and that's not going to happen that often.
Moments later, one of NASCAR's most popular drivers suffers a fatal crash coming off turn number 4 at Daytona International Speedway, and the sport once again grieves. Hello, everybody. I'm Pat Patterson, and much of the excitement and anticipation of NASCAR Speed Weeks 94 here in Daytona Beach is missing because of that tragic crash Friday that took the life of our friend and TNN colleague Neil Bonnet. But the show must go on, and more than 60 NASCAR teams are here for the Super Bowl of the sport. We'll have more on Neil a little bit later in the show. Probably the biggest question going into 500 pole qualifying yesterday was how would Hoosier Tire do in its return to Winston Cup competition? Jason Young has our story.
In qualifying for the Daytona 500, only the top 2 positions are guaranteed. Everyone else would have to run the twin 125s to get into the Super Bowl of stock car racing. But for the record, here's the top 5. DK Ulrich's brand new U.S. Air team with driver Greg Sachs was the 5th fastest on Hoosiers. 4th fastest was Sterling Marlin on Goodyear's driving the Kodak Chevrolet. The car vacated last year by the 3rd fastest qualifier, Ernie Irvan. Of course, he is now piloting the Texaco Haviland Thunderbird for the Robert Yates team. They also picked the Goodyear brand. The 2nd fastest was 1993 champion Dale Earnhardt with a speed of 190 miles per hour. He too was on Goodyear's. The pole sitter is on the Hoosier Tire and is a rookie. His name is Loy Allen Jr., driving the number 19 Hooters machine for TriStar Motorsports. He turned in a time of 47.32 seconds with a speed of 190.1 miles per hour. The 27-year-old is also on the pole for today's ARCA 200. This is the first time in the track's history that a driver has gotten the number 1 spot for both the ARCA 200 and the Daytona 500. This is also the first time that a rookie has sat on the pole for the 500. But one question still remains. How will the Hoosiers hold up during long green flag runs? This is Jason Young reporting for Race Day.
And the pole sitter was as surprised as everybody else.
Well, I guess it really hasn't sunk in yet. I mean, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. But we're just looking forward to next week and looking forward to 125s.
And we invite you to join us on the evening version of Race Day as we'll talk with both bosses of Hoosier and Goodyear about the impact of the tire competition. Now, the first real test of this year's Speed Weeks comes in just a few minutes in the annual Busch Clash for last year's pole sitters. Here's the way the starting grid was drawn on Thursday. Ken Schrader is on the pole, and with the wild card drawing winner P.J. Jones alongside in his first and last race in that car this year. More on that a little later in the show. Dale Earnhardt will be on the inside of row number 2, and Jeff Bodine will be on the outside. He's on Hoosier Tires. On the 3rd row, it'll be Mark Martin and Jeff Gordon. On row number 4, it's Harry Gant and Rusty Wallace. And on the 5th row, it'll be Ernie Irvan and Kyle Petty, while Bill Elliott, Bobby Labonte, and Brett Bodine got the short end of the draw. Now, the gentleman sitting to my left, I know wishes he was out there today in whatever position, and that's the reigning 500 champion, Dale Jarrett. And the question isn't if you can walk and chew bubble gum, but can you announce and hold an umbrella at the same time? And we're doing pretty good at it so far.
You're doing a heck of a job, yeah. Thank you.
Talk about qualifying yesterday. I know you guys were looking for a little better, but there were a lot of people scratching their heads. How did it go for you yesterday?
Well, we're not as fast. You know, last year we came here with a plan for qualifying for the race, and everything worked out perfectly for us. This year we were still doing a lot of testing on Friday because we weren't as fast as we wanted to be down here in the test. It showed up yesterday in qualifying. We're 24th, not where we want to be certainly, but still some time. The car drives awfully good, and that's going to be the key next Sunday is who has the best handling car.
Dale, everybody, as far as Hoosier Goodyear, have you been around it long enough to figure out if there is any advantage one way or the other at this point?
It looks like the Hoosier tire is a little bit faster on the go. Now, what's going to happen after we run 8, 10, 15 laps, I don't think anybody knows. Today's Busch Clash is going to give us an idea, although they only run 10-lap segments there, but we'll still have an idea if they're going to be competitive once we get to drafting.
Loy Allen Jr., well, that's got to be a great way to start your Winston Cup career for him. How about the Clash today, though? Who do you think, who's your favorites out there as far as these guys, the way they're lined up?
I think you've got to look at 2 guys in it. Certainly one that is always a favorite, Dale Earnhardt here to win a Clash or any other race. And Ernie Irvan, he's going to be awfully tough. He knows this racetrack well. He's won the 500. A short race like this, I think those 2 guys probably have the better chance.
Quickly, the weather, there's a little bit of rain coming down. How much much is that going to play into the track condition?
Well, I think you have to be a little bit careful. This place can stay a little bit damp and make sure they get it really dry, but it ought to be a fast racetrack being cooled off some.
Be nice to win this thing 2 years in a row, wouldn't it? This 500 thing that happens next weekend.
Yeah, you know, numbers are on our side with everything. The Cowboys winning 73 and 74, 83 and 84. The only other 2 times it's been won back-to-back. So, yeah, it would be great, and I think we have a legitimate shot at it. I'm really excited about it for our Interstate Batteries team.
Good luck to you. Appreciate you stopping by. I know
Sure.
you'll be heading over to watch the race. Today's Clash is probably the best possible medicine for many aching hearts in the garage, because Neil Bonnet was not only an accomplished driver, but he was one of the most popular men the sport has ever known. Here's Tom DeWeese with a look back at Neil.
Some people knew Neil Bonnet as a race car driver, while others knew him as an announcer, but everyone knew him as a friend. On the track, he was one of the most competitive drivers ever to climb behind the wheel of a car. In his 16 years on the Winston Cup Tour, Neil found his way into victory lane 18 times, while at the same time finding his way into the hearts of race fans across the country. As a member of the Alabama gang, the name Neil Bonnet became a part of racing history. When asked once what he saw as his best accomplishment in racing, he replied, "Being able to drive for the top teams and the people I've associated with." And he associated with some of the biggest names the sport has ever known, driving for his friend Bobby Allison, the Wood brothers, and Junior Johnson. Bonnet's career was filled with success and accomplishment, but it also had its share of pain. In 1990 at Darlington, the Alabama native was in an accident that doctors thought would take him out of the driver's seat forever. But determined to hang on to what he loved so much, he fought back against the odds and rehabilitated himself right back into racing. But during that time, Neil showed he was more than just a driver. He went up into the television booth and shared his knowledge, his experience with the fans, all the time making friends wherever he went. Then last year, he put his microphone down and put the driving gloves back on. He was back where he truly belonged, behind the wheel of a car. But the road back was not an easy one. In his return to Talladega last July, Bonnet was in a terrible crash, and while friends and fans held their breath hoping for the best, he climbed out of the wreckage unscathed. Most men would have walked away, but Neil Bonnet wasn't like most men. He loved to race, and that was what he was going to do. Many questioned why he would return this year on a limited basis, but for him, it never really was a question. He would continue. When asked once what he feared most about racing, he replied, "Not being competitive. My biggest concern in coming back is getting in the car where it runs up front. If I were concerned with getting hurt, I wouldn't get back in to start with." His determination will be one of only many things that will be missed about Neil Bonnet. He may go down in history as a race car driver, but most of us will remember him as a friend first and a driver second. This is Tom DeWeese reporting for Race Day.
Bonnet's team is withdrawn from all the remaining Speed Week activities. Funeral services for Neil will be at 2 p.m. on Monday at Garywood Assembly of God, Warrior River Road in Hueytown, Alabama. Time permitting at the end of the show, we'll give you that address where memorial donations can be made. Our prayers are with his wife, Susan, and the entire Bonnet family. We'll be right back. Welcome back live to Daytona Beach, everybody. Before we get back to the action here, the IMSA Road Race Series has a new owner. This past Monday, Florida businessman and former racer Charlie Slater bought the 23-year-old sanctioning body and has brought in Harold Kelly Jr. to be the president of IMSA. That means that Dan Greenwood is out. Slater told Race Day that there won't be any other immediate changes in IMSA racing on or off the track. The sidebar to that story is that one high-placed source told us that before Slater bought the series, the NASCAR France family had expressed an interest. I'll tell you, here in Daytona, there's been a lot of head-scratching going on as everybody's trying to figure out who's in what Winston Cup car this year. Even in the garage area, it's been pretty confusing. So our Stephanie Boyd set out to try to clear things up.
The first couple of garage stalls here at Daytona International Speedway feature some of the best teams in Winston Cup racing, and that makes things easy if you're trying to keep up. With the exception of Rusty Wallace switching to Ford, the top 5 or 6 drivers are in the same cars with the same teams and the same sponsors. But after that, things start to get complicated.
Yeah, with all the driver changes, I think the only one you know that's the same is myself in this car, Mark in the 6, and Dale Earnhardt in the 3. You don't know who's in the 28. You don't know who's in the 4. I was out there running this morning. I thought Richard Petty was in the 43 because they changed back from the 44 to the 43. So it's going to be a fun year.
You think you're behind so-and-so, and you're like, no, wait a minute, so-and-so's driving this car. So, you know, that takes a while to get used to. And there's been a lot of that this year, and there's a lot of new teams. So might take a little bit longer this year.
Dallenbach says when it comes to his own new team, he has no trouble remembering the famous number 43. But it wasn't quite so easy for Hut Strickland during winter testing after a year behind the wheel of the McDonald's machine.
I got to say there's probably once or twice through the test I probably headed over to that truck, and, you know, especially when I got hungry.
So just what are some of the biggest changes for 1994? Well, we decided to ask the experts, the fans. Who's in the 12 car, the Bobby Allison car?
You got me.
Chuck Bound. Okay, let's try.
I knew that.
Okay, Ricky Rudd, his car is different. He's in the 5, but it's Kellogg's.
Who's in the 77 car?
Craig Sachs.
No?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Jimmy Hensley's in the other one. You got me.
Well, which car is Jimmy Hensley in?
No sponsor, 55, right?
What would you say if I told you that Ricky Rudd still had tied with him?
But isn't that in the Busch Grand Nationals? No?
Okay, so Rudd still got tied, but he's now in the 10 car, and his old number 5 goes to Terry Labonte in the Kellogg's machine. In all, about 30 cars have come to Daytona with either a driver, sponsor, or some kind of team change. So since we can't possibly go through all of them here, the key is to do your homework. This is Stephanie Boyd reporting for Race Day.
And at last count, program sales are brisk. There's another change already as P.J. Jones quit the Melling car effective after today's clash. He says he wasn't told about his owner's plans on running 2 cars here. Jones felt that the team was short-staffed and needed to focus on just one entry. Joe Ruttman stepped up to the 2nd car to take Jones's place in qualifying on yesterday. The other big race today is, of course, the Daytona 200 for the ARCA Hooters Cup cars, and Loy Allen Jr. is getting to make a habit of winning poles on the big tracks. The North Carolinian earned the top spot on Thursday. He'll be joined on the front row by Tim Fedowa. Bob Hill and Jeff Purvis are on row number 2, and defending series champ Tim Steele will start 23rd. We mentioned that because last year's best ARCA driver stopped by just a few minutes ago. Among other things, I asked him if there was any problem starting that far back.
Team-wise and motor-wise, you know, I feel really comfortable. We had problems qualifying, and you know, we figured out what was wrong with the car. We had something wrong with the carburetor, but, you know, now the car's rocket ship fast. I just hope history don't keep repeating itself down here with a first couple 2-3 lap crash.
And I'm sure everybody else is hoping that as well. Over 70-some cars, I understand, tried to make the field. What are your big concerns going into the race today? Of course, Loy Allen Jr. on the pole for this one. What do you feel like is real important for yourself first few laps?
To stay out of trouble and, you know, try and get up to that lead lap draft or the lead car draft as quick as I can get up there. You know, the quicker we can get up away from where we shouldn't be running and get up with the cars we should be running, I think we'll be a lot better off. You know, I'm going to kind of hold back the first few laps, which every racer will tell you that, but I think about every one of us lie every now and again.
Hate to go back to last year, but you would have won Rookie of the Year, but you ended up winning the championship. Can't have both, so you took the championship. Can you repeat it this year, and is it so important to get a good start here?
Well, last year, you know, we won the championship, but unfortunately we got caught up in that 2nd lap crash, and we started 8th here last year. But, you know, it's important, but as far as last year went, you know, didn't turn out to be that big a factor. We ended up winning the championship by like 350 points, something like that.
I was going to ask you if you've been pinching yourself, wondering if that's really true. Did I actually win the championship?
Yeah, exactly. The way the first 2 races started off, you know, here with a big wreck, and Pensacola, we went there and qualified on the pole, led the most laps, and 15 laps ago, I think there's 2 or 3 cars on the lead lap were leading the race, and broke a hub on the right rear of the car, and, you know, all my hopes for the championship about that time was gone. But from there on out, we couldn't do a thing wrong.
And, you know, I always wanted to do the weather on this show. It's raining. Coming up next, the World of Outlaws opened up this past Thursday night. We'll have all the highlights. Stay with us, everybody.
Race Day is brought to you in part by Old Milwaukee and Old Milwaukee Light. It doesn't get any better than this.
And welcome back live to Daytona Beach, everybody. Just a little bit of rain coming down, nothing to worry about. The folks continue to file into the Speedway for a full day of action. World of Outlaws, meanwhile, cranked up another season last Thursday night, and among those returning to action was Doug Wolfgang. You recall Wolfie suffered serious burns in 1992 in a crash, then he had an abortive comeback last summer. Thursday, we asked him if he felt a little out of place after such a long layoff.
It feels real strange. That's what's scary for me, because it feels so strange for me right now. I don't know if I'll ever be any good anymore. And I don't know how long to persevere through it and continue to go to the point where I decide, no, I'm not going to be good, because it does feel that strange to me right now. It feels different. I don't know why. I wish it didn't.
And here with the full story on how Wolfgang did in the Outlaws season opener is Mark Allen.
Pat, with the St. Augustine Speedway appearing on the World of Outlaws schedule for the first time ever, Big Three or not, it was an even playing field for the Thursday night season opener.
The toughest break of the night, or maybe the best air show, came from Jeff Shepard after getting together with Steve Kinzer. The St. Augustine Speedway was a one-groove track, and that worked right into Dave Blaney's hands, who led every lap for the 20-lap preliminary feature win. Sammy Swindell was second, with Danny Smith third, Stevie Smith was fourth, and Greg Hotnet was fifth. Wolfgang was seventh. The next night, the track was the same, but the man up front was different. The 45X of Johnny Herrera was the point setter, but an oil line had come loose, dumping hot fluid on his feet. With Herrera distracted, Stevie Smith took the opening and carried it to victory. Herrera still took second, with Danny Lasowski third, Jeff Swindell was fourth, and Andy Hillenberg was fifth.
This is Mark Allen reporting for Race Day.
Thanks, Mark. It's great to see Wolfie back. Last Sunday marked the kickoff of a number of racing series, and they were all in one place. Of course, I'm talking about the annual Skoal Copper Classic.
It was certainly a big weekend of racing in Phoenix, Arizona, with the Copper Classic ready to roll. The first of 4 major races was a midget race that turned out to be one of the better shows. From the drop of the green, Mike Bliss may have taken the lead, but Paige Jones in the 71 made a great move to the inside to get right behind the leader. But late in the race, it turned into a 3-car battle with a couple of 9 cars trailing a 6. The 3 traded back and forth until Chuck Gurney in the 9F took the lead for good. Second went to Stevie Reeves, followed by Andy Michener, Jimmy Seals, and Jim Beckley. The second race featured the Super Modifieds. Davey Hamilton let the rest of the field know he meant business when he went out and qualified 4 miles an hour faster than anyone else. So it was no surprise that the number 1 was out front quickly. But then surprises started popping up. Here the 14 cars started to go inside, but Jimmy Seals was already there, and Seals ended up on his side. Then off of the restart, John Heidenreich went for a wild ride and ended up upside down on the track. Accidents like this continued, but they didn't seem to bother Davey Hamilton as he pulled away and left the rest of the field in his rearview mirror. Second went to Jeff Helton, followed by Rebel Jackson Jr., Scott Backman, and Pat Abel. Next up was the Silver Crown Series with Ron Schumann on the pole, but just like the earlier race, watch the move to the inside by number 11 George Ziggy Snyder. Snyder, the first Silver Crown champion, was out front and in the lead. But the veteran wouldn't be able to hold off a determined Kenny Irwin Jr., who took over the top spot and held on to it until the checkers fell. Second went to Snyder, then it was Tony Stewart, Jim Keeker, and Mike Bliss. The final race was the Southwest Tour Series 94 kickoff. Lance Hooper was on the pole and led the field through the first 9 laps, but then he gave it up to a hard-charging Ron Hornaday Jr. Hornaday would hold on to the top spot for the next 30-plus laps until this harmless-looking restart turned ugly when Kirk Rogers lost control of his car. This resulted in a multi-car pileup along the front stretch. After the mess was cleaned up, Hornaday continued to lead until Brett Bell caught him and passed him. From there on, he held on to the top spot for his first Southwest Tour victory. Hornaday finished second, followed by Rick Crawford, John Dillon, and Lance Hooper.
And February always means another annual event we look forward to, and that's the return of the Pocono Track Fact Sweepstakes. Pocono President Joe Mattielli stopped by yesterday to talk about this year's contest.
It's back because the fans love it, and we love doing it. It's an exciting thing where fans have a chance to win cash, tickets to Pocono, and some lucky fan's going to win an all-expense paid trip for 2 to the beautiful Pocono Mountains and one of our Winston Cup events.
All right, the contest itself begins next Sunday on Race Day, and here's how you can enter. Send your name, address, and phone number to Pocono Track Fact Sweepstakes in care of Pocono Raceway, P.O. Box 500, Long Pond, Pennsylvania, 18334-0500. Next Sunday morning, we'll ask a question about racing at Pocono, and right after the show, if we call you and you know the right answer, you'll win $500 in cash or your choice of 2 tickets to either the June 12th Pocono 500 or the July 17th Miller Genuine Draft 500. The weekly winners will be announced on the evening race day show, and the grand prize, of course, the winner will get among 10 weekly, will be drawn from 10 weekly winners and announced in May, and that lucky person will receive all expenses paid trip to Pocono's June 12th Winston Cup race. So enter now, and as we head to break, we'll remind you that tonight on race day, how will this year's tire competition be between Goodyear and Hoosier? Will it be different from 1988? The answer may surprise you. Be sure to join us. More race day right after this.
Race Day is brought to you in part by Old Milwaukee and Old Milwaukee Light. It doesn't get any better than this.
One quick note, a couple 3 guys will be on Hoosier Tires. Should be a good clash this afternoon. Hope you enjoy it. That's it for now. Be sure to join us at 8:30 Eastern on race day. We'll have highlights from the clash and an interview with the winner. Plus, there's a lot of other racing going on here in Florida, and much of it involves drivers from the Northeast who just got out of that last big blizzard. Until tonight, I'm Pat Patterson. Have a great racing day. We'll see you back here at 8:30.
Transportation provided by Cedar Ridge RV Center of Branchville, New Jersey. Call 1-800-988-4884 and find out why Cedar Ridge is the choice of champions. Communications provided by Racing Electronics, the official communications of Race Day. For a free catalog, call 1-800-272-7111. And by Featherlight Trailers, the official trailer of NASCAR and major sponsor of the NHRA. Remember to call Featherlight for all your trailer needs at 1-800-800-1230.
Race Day Daytona Beach location provided by Pep Boys, America's Automotive Supercenter.